The Ukrainian peninsula of Crimea, Russian soldiers, then labelled as Little Green Men, control most of the key infrastructure, government buildings, transport hubs and military barracks. Billboards on the street call for an uncontested vote for Crimea to join Russia under the guise of a referendum. The vote was illegal under the Ukrainian constitution and conducted under the close supervision of regular Russian army troops and local forces. It's a sort of pseudo-democratic cover-up to cover the violations of international law and the cynical annexation of another country's territory. For the first time since the Second World War, the territory of one state was captured by another state. The ballot papers only allowed Crimeans two options, and keeping the status quo in accordance with Ukrainian law was not one of them. Instead, people could either vote to join Russia or vote for changes which could have led to Crimea joining Russia, a lose-lose situation for the hundreds of thousands of voters who wanted things to stay the same. There were a number of cases when Russian citizens with Russian passports were given the opportunity to vote in the referendum. There were people with guns at the polling centres, so I can definitely say that those elections were conducted at gunpoint. Credible referendum observers were turned away. Instead, more Kremlin-friendly faces came, such as representatives from some of Europe's more radical parties, such as Hungary's Jobbik and Austria's Freedom Party. According to the self-styled Kremlin-led authorities, almost 97% of people who voted wanted Crimea to be part of Russia. Many condemned it as a way to rubber stamp Russia's illegal invasion. Over a week prior to the so-called referendum in occupied Crimea, Kremlin leader Vladimir Putin denied the presence of Russian troops, only to confess what many had suspected anyway, that the armed men without insignia outside polling stations weren't local defense forces but regular Russian army troops. The so-called Crimean referendum was not recognized as legitimate by the majority of countries and key international organizations. They declared it unlawful and its results illegitimate. According to political analysts, the de facto integration of Crimea into Russia has severely undermined the foundations of the European security system. Russia's occupation of Ukrainian territories has undermined the foundations of international security and the post-war system of international security, which stands on the principle of inviolability of borders. The foundations of international law are established by the UN Charter and the Helsinki Final Act. All this came under attack. This system is very complex. It wasn't destroyed, but it was severely crippled. Already, for 3 years, we've been having a deep crisis of the international security system. After Russia's annexation of Crimea, a campaign of oppression began in the Black Sea Peninsula, including kidnappings, searches and arrests. Tens of thousands of people have already fled. According to the Crimean Tatar Resource Center, more than 40 activists have been imprisoned, 11 were killed, and 14 more are missing. The evidence of the Kremlin's atrocities in Crimea and Donbass was recently presented in The Hague during a UN court hearing, where Ukraine demanded to protect the rights and lives of citizens on the occupied territory and to hold the aggressor to account.